An average human being has all five senses: sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. You know what is green because you've seen grass. You know what is soft because you've pet a cat. You know what is loud because you've heard a thunderstorm. But how can we explain the green color to someone who's born blind? How can we describe the scent of roses to someone who can only breathe through their mouth? We base our reality on what we can perceive. You compare, you identify, and you have as truth. For example, lemon flavor is different from strawberry flavor. Why? Because one is sweeter than the other. And you know which one I'm talking about because you believe that statement as an absolute truth, since you already tasted both of them. And that is your perception. Perception refers to the way in which we interpret and understand sensory information from our environment. It is very often influenced by your previous experiences, beliefs, and expectations. But what about your perspective? Perspective, on the other hand, refers to a particular point of view that can be influenced by the context in which something is presented. For example, we both agree that lemon is sour and strawberry sweet because of our perception. But if I say lemon is my favorite fruit because I like the sour taste, you might not understand why I prefer sour over sweet since our perspectives are different. So our perspective is a belief we structure around what we perceive as reality. Thus, having a narrow perception of reality can result in a limited perspective, leading to inflexible beliefs. But that doesn't mean that having less than your five senses working perfectly makes you a closed-minded type of person, as your perspective on what you perceive as reality can be just as expanded as anyone else's. And what I mean by this is that being in circumstances that limit your perception, whether it's having to wear glasses because of very few degrees of myopia, or not being able to taste food because your tongue has been cut out, won't stop you from working on the senses you have, creating the reality you want to live in by expanding your perspective, which means your point of view. We can do this by leveling up our layers of consciousness. The higher we go, bigger the picture we see. We are one in essence, but once we decided to split up to experience various life forms embedded in different perspectives of space-time, we became individuals too. So there are the collective layers and the individual layers of consciousness. It's okay if you don't understand them all in a practical way. We're all learners. But if you are a superhero, a demigod, the most evolved human being in the Milky Way, or you possessed by a demon, congratulations. You're not better than anyone else. Welcome, space-time travelers, to my personal database. I am the Lady of the Lake, but you can call me 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐿. And here, this channel, we are using alchemy, psychology, quantum information theory, and other mind-blowing stuff to lower the density of our energy so we can experience a life free of worry, doubt, and fear. Solve et coagula Separatio et Coniunctio is an alchemy expression that means to break a substance down to its basic elements before reforming it into something new. Before jumping to a higher level of awareness, we need to master the basics. And for that, I created something called the elevator, a method to understand how we can raise our level of consciousness. On this video, we're going to cover all the levels in the water element section so we can understand what each one is about and how we can advance from one level to another. But before getting into it, I feel the need to talk about a similar model developed by Ken Wilber. The spectrum of consciousness refers to the idea that human consciousness can be understood as existing on a sequence, with different stages of consciousness that build upon each other. Wilber's model of the spectrum of consciousness is based on his theory of the four quadrants, which suggests that human experience can be understood in terms of subjective experience, objective behavior, intersubjective relationships, and cultural and social systems. Each of these quadrants can be further divided into levels of consciousness that are characterized by particular modes of values and worldviews. According to Wilber, the purpose of this spectrum of consciousness is to provide a framework for understanding the evolution of human consciousness and the various stages and levels of consciousness that individuals can experience as they develop and grow. However, the purpose of the elevator is not primarily anthropological. psychological. Instead of understanding and categorizing the relationships between humans and their world, the elevator method focuses on self-exploration, with the goal of refining your belief structure by eliminating barriers in thought processes and relieving the weight of existential awareness. You can draw parallels between the spectrum of consciousness and the elevator if you're interested in doing so, but keep in mind they are different concepts to achieve different goals. As this is already clear, let's move on. The first 4 levels are ruled by the water element, and that's because water represents the source of creation. You don't need to manipulate water to create life. Life will manifest itself anywhere we can find water. So, let's begin with the first level, the point of light. This is when we exist as an abstract form of energy. No questions, no feelings, no thoughts, good times.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
In the collective timeline, this is when we are the universe itself as a unit. We are part of the same source of creation and consciousness. Whether there was a big explosion or a superior entity who created light from darkness, we remain on this stage of oneness until there is a separation in matter. On the individual timeline, the one each one of us experiences separately, we are at this level of consciousness when we are newborns. We simply exist with our instinctual nature, and we cannot say what is part of us and what is part of the world because we still don't have that discernment. In order to advance from the first to the second level, something beautiful needs to happen. We need to recognize ourselves. Carl Sagan once said,
"We are a way for the cosmos to know itself."
And the second level is when we split. That's why I named this level the glowing line. And you may think this makes no sense because a line is just a line, but a line is actually a bunch of points one after the other. So what happens when our consciousness advances to the second level is that we start perceiving reality based on the infinity mirror effect. When you point 2 mirrors facing each other, the reflections back and forth between them, creating a never-ending sequence of smaller reflections that look like they go on forever. But that's just an illusion.
Now, at first glance, it might just look like a regular mirror. However, watch what happens. Put the camera down for a second here and turn the mirror on. All of a sudden, the mirror looks like it has depth. This happens because there is a string of LEDs, or light-emitting diodes, that's actually sandwiched in between 2 mirrors. So light bounces back and forth in between the mirrors, and some of it escapes, which creates this tunnel illusion.
The illusion of I and me as myself, and you are you as yourself, when in fact, everything you're able to experience is a part of who you are. We'll talk more about this in upcoming videos. Collectively, we get to this level when we understand we can only know who we are if we're able to observe and contemplate about our own existence. Individually, we get to this level when we're able to look in the mirror and tell that the person in the reflection is who we should recognize as who we are. Therefore, in the second level, we learn to separate what we are from what we are not.
Now it notices the red dot and the link between itself and the image in the mirror.
It's not red anymore.
What's not red?
My head.
Now this next level you may know as the third dimension or the 3D, but I don't like using the word dimension when I'm describing layers of consciousness because we're not talking about a physical space. We're talking about a metaphysical situation, and that's really important to understand before we move forward. The elevator is not a literal elevator. It's a way to better understand that your reality is based on what you experience as truth, and leveling up means you are expanding what you consider reality because truth ever grows. So we reach the holographic cube level when we become aware of our environment, when we understand what surrounds us. If we just separated what we are from what we are not, we are now realizing that we are included somewhere, and to be somewhere we need to have space. You cannot be somewhere if nowhere exists, right? Therefore, we exist within the space. Collectively, we are at the third level when we understand we are in the field, but we also vibrate with the field.
In that case, we can influence the aspects that surrounds us, but our environment also influences who we are. Individually, we reach the cube level as soon as the need to belong grows within us, meaning that we want to be part of a group that resonates with who we believe we are. This is when we decide to express ourselves and find our own place in the world. We understand who we are as individuals, but not only that, we understand that as individuals, we have our own perception of the world, and we want others to understand the perspective we have of our environment. The obstacle here is noticing when the need for approval takes over your individuality and authenticity. Because if you allow the environment to mold you in a way in which you no longer recognize yourself, you create an imbalance in your reality, generating fear, frustration, anger, and guilt. But I know you don't have a lot of patience, and you have every right not to listen to me. Who am I to lecture you? What do I know? We are just trying to find a place to belong. And now we move towards the concept that separates us humans from other animals. Animals aren't stupid. They live in harmony with nature and adapt to the circumstances that will benefit their existence. If they cannot keep up with how Earth evolves, eventually they go extinct. But there's only one animal who knows their time here is limited. Humans were the ones who decided to measure time, to count the days, to celebrate the new year, and make it obvious for future generations they were here. So we started painting the walls, carving figures in stone, and writing about our experiences, hoping to be seen, heard, and remembered, because we know we won't be here forever. In the fourth level, or the tree of life, we are aware of time. But can we talk about time without mentioning the ancient Egyptians? No, we cannot. Thought was worshipped as a god of wisdom, writing, science, and magic. Thought was credited with creating the Egyptian calendar and was believed to be the author of many important texts, including the Book of Dead and the Emerald Tablets. In the 10th Emerald Tablet, called the Key of Time, Thoth describes one of his encounters with the Dweller, which was a superior entity, and the Dweller describes time as
time changes not, but all things change in time. For time is the force that holds events separate, each in its own proper place. Time is not in motion, but ye move through time as your consciousness moves from one event to another.
In the Tree of Life level, we perceive events happening in a linear way, past, present, and future, even though in the bigger picture, all events happen simultaneously. But for anything to happen, there must be a consciousness who experiences the event. To have an effect, all information needs to be digested by the consciousness of an individual. We only see things happening in a linear way because we decided to. We create this illusion to cope with the amount of information encoded in space-time.
Just as running multiple programs at the same time can slow down your computer, when we are at the fourth level of consciousness, we don't yet possess the qualified mindset to perceive all events happening simultaneously. Therefore, we order them chronologically, enabling us to properly experience all the available information.
Collectively, when we are in the fourth level of consciousness, we are guided to contemplate past experiences and learn with our history, so we can make the best decision for ourselves in the present to benefit our future. Individually, the Tree of Life level makes us understand that no matter how many achievements you had in your life, your true legacy is hidden in your gratitude for the experience. That it doesn't matter how tall your temple is, how big is your empire, how many books you've written, how many followers you have, how destructive are your books, how many planets you've discovered. In the end, when your body's cold, your vision is blurred, your breathing is shallow, and your heart is ready to rest, you will wish you had more time to touch more souls with love. Man fears time, and time may fear the pyramids, but all that comes from water will return to water. So every second we can live the experience is a moment worth cherishing. Until now, advancing to the fourth level was quite natural because we learn about matter, space, and time as we grow and develop our cognitive abilities such as spatial awareness, memory, language, attention, and many others. But to move to the fifth level, it's not so easy. The transition between the water and the fire element in the elevator is ruled by calcination, the first classical chemical stage, and we're going to cover this stage in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find the peace you seek.